This interesting pass was built by the military in the 1980s and provides a safe all-weather pass for technicians to service the microwave and other towers at the summit point, where 7 distinct peaks are known as the Seven Sisters. The quality of the road, although narrow, is very good, with cuttings, good drainage and camber included in the construction. The views are spectacular for want of a better superlative, and as there is to all intents and purposes no traffic, the area is wild and remote despite its proximity to nearby Wellington and Paarl. Wildlife abounds, with antelope and leopards often being seen. Statistically, it's impressive as well, gaining 500 meters of altitude over just 6 kilometers, which produces an average gradient of 1 in 12, but there are some steep sections which do ramp up to 1 in 5. Traction is, however, very good, except when there is snow around, in which case a 4-wheel drive vehicle is mandatory. The road is controlled by Cape Nature, Telkom, the South African government and private landowners, and is fully restricted. We've added it to our database so the public can get a feel of what it's like via our video set. Immediately after turning off the R101, the road curves through 100 degrees to the right, where the road is barred by a very secure set of steel gates. Please do not attempt to enter illegally. There are numerous hidden cameras all along the pass, and you will be caught and arrested for trespassing. The top of the mountain is a national key point, so security is high. Once past the gates, the road begins climbing immediately into the east via a set of 13 bends, some of which are very sharp as well as blind. Usually there's no traffic on this road, but just in case there's a technician descending, it's best to approach each corner carefully. At the 1.2 kilometer mark, there's a horseshoe bend which changes the direction by 130 degrees, now facing almost directly north. The gradient remains at a steady 1 in 10, but there are fewer sharp bends for the next few kilometers. Later, at the 1.4 kilometer mark, there's a road leading to a farmhouse, followed by a second road 700 meters further, which goes to the main farmstead at the De Poort farm. This is private property, do not enter. The views on the right-hand side are wide, over the rugged plateaus with grey buttresses receding into the distance. It gets bitterly cold here in midwinter. At the 2 kilometer point, the road levels off briefly as it heads towards a small stream crossing at the 2.3 kilometer mark. An entire hiking family was washed down this gorge in a particularly fierce winter rainstorm when they were trying to find shelter. When you drive over this little trickle of a stream in summer, it's hard to imagine it can become so dangerous. The Limitberg Nature Reserve is a pristine reserve tucked away in the De Toitskloof Mountains near Paarl. The reserve stretches from Franschhoek in the south, eastward towards Groot Drakenstein, and northwards as far as the Voelvlei Dam, and it is a World Heritage Site. The road resumes its climb gradient of 1 in 10 and heads resolutely into the northeast. At the 2.8 kilometer and 3 kilometer points, there are turnoffs to the right. Both of these lead to private homes. Also at the 3 kilometer mark is a sharp 90-degree left-hand bend which heralds a long section into the north and also the most interesting part of the pass. At the 3.5 kilometer mark there's a clearing on the right providing parking for a few vehicles whose owners will most likely be at the Mountain Club of South Africa's overnight hut a few kilometers down the ridge. For the next 1.7 kilometers, the road will climb relentlessly through multiple sharp and blind corners between deep cuttings with glimpses of the lovely views popping out here and there. The left-hand views are steep mountainside. This short section has 21 bends crammed into that length, which equates to 1 bend every 80 meters. At the 4.7 kilometer point, the road reaches the lip of a ravine and bends sharply to the left to align itself with the same ravine. For the next 500 meters, the road climbs very steeply into the west-northwest at a gradient of 1 in 8, then begins another change in direction via some very sharp corners and steep cuttings. Some 102,000 hectares of fynbos-covered mountain slopes, challenging cliffs, and indigenous river valleys make up the Limitberg Nature Reserve. It stretches from Franschhoek in the south to the Klein Drakenstein Mountains in the east and the Elandsberge in the north, and forms part of the Greater Boland mountain range. The area is an important water catchment for the Brede and Berg rivers. The catchment also feeds the Wemmerzoek, Statinskloof and Brandvlei dams. The reserve offers a number of beautiful hikes through steep cliffs and deep valleys. Toy's Peak at 1,996 meters is the highest point within the reserve. Visitors can also visit the many historical sites along the trails, including ancient rock art, a disused manganese mine, and the graves of convicts who helped build the Bainskloof Pass. The reserve gets extremely hot and dry in summer, but in winter the high mountain peaks are capped with snow. When visiting Limitberg, please check the weather forecast, as hikers can get caught in unpredictable and dangerous conditions. Small antelope, baboon and the occasional caracal and leopard do occur. You may also be lucky enough to spot endemic birds such as the Cape sugarbird and the Protea canary, as well as the majestic black eagle. 3 endemic fish species are increasingly threatened by alien trout that were introduced prior to the establishment of the reserve. Tweed Atoll is a perfect spot for picnicking, but to avoid disappointment, we suggest that you come early, as day visitors are limited to 120 people. Human occupation dates from the early Stone Age groups to the Cocoon and Bushmen to the settlement of Freeburgers and Huguenot refugees. The first settlers were mainly French Huguenots who arrived in the valley as early as 1688. Simon van der Stel granted the Huguenots farms to meet the company's growing need for agriculture and to provide a buffer against the marauding Khoisan San. These were early pioneering farmers settling on the furthest outposts of the colony. They gave the valley its most appropriate name, Limit Valley, used up to about 1695. At the 5.4 kilometer mark there's a fork in the road, where the left-hand concrete option leads to a tower 50 meters further with very good views over the Groenkloof Valley immediately below, with extended views over Wellington and Riebeek-Kasteel. The right-hand option shown here curls sharply to the right and climbs steeply through the last 5 bends to reach the Telkom concrete tower at an elevation of 1,323 meters. The views are excellent from the summit point in almost every direction. The descent is even better than the ascent, as the fabulous views are permanently available. Be aware that there is very little space at the summit to turn vehicles around, which involve 3-point turns or even more for bigger vehicles. We recommend only 2 vehicles at a time should go to the summit point. As mentioned at the start of this description, this is a restricted road and the public are not allowed access except in certain instances, as with members of the Mountain Club of South Africa, Cape Nature officials, landowners and Telkom personnel. The town of Wellington was originally known as Wagenmakersvallei, the Valley of the Wagon Builders. This name predates European settlement in the late 1690s and was probably a reference to the wood that wagon builders harvested in the area. The town of Wellington was proclaimed in 1840 on the farm Champagne. Part of the land was used for the church, which was consecrated in 1840, with Reverend A.F. du Toit as the first minister. The rest of the land was subdivided into plots, which became the nucleus of the town. Education in the valley dates to the early Stücki and Groenberg schools, which were tiny farm schools, and the foundation laid for the Huguenot Seminary and Huguenot University College, with its many offshoots, to the present-day Cape Peninsula University of Technology, the Wellington campus, the Huguenot College, and the many schools of Wellington. A substantial part of the Wellington Museum is dedicated to Andrew Murray and his vision. His visions for providing tertiary education for girls laid the foundation for many schools throughout the Boland and the Eastern Cape. Through his influence, Wellington became a well-known centre for education. His vision for winning Africa for Christ also led him beyond the borders of Wellington. Missionaries from Wellington penetrated deep into the heart of Africa. Murray was the minister of the Dutch Reformed Church of Wellington from 1871 to 1906 and lived here until his death in 1917.